Great. Thanks for having me. So, as I was introduced as Deepak Pareek, who's part of the World Economic Forum, as well as I had a couple of startup, exited Microp, and now I'm having a organization called DigiAgri, which is currently working in 4 countries. So we work in Middle East, we work in Nepal, we work in India, and we are working in Ethiopia. Typically, we are across the complete crop cycle. So from working with farmers on ground to helping them to sell their produce. So we work on holistic way. We are actually the bootstrap startup, and last year we ended 31st March in profit. So I'll say that we are among very few companies that in the first year of incorporation itself we are profitable, clocking revenues of in first year itself of close to 150,000 US dollars. So life has been so far so good before COVID. So COVID has gonna change a lot of things for sure. Today I'll be talking about something which we strongly believe is gonna be the future of agriculture. So we talk about next big five, where we focus on the technology megatrends which are gonna be transforming the agriculture industry. So we strongly see that there is a lot of opportunities where the agriculture value chains are gonna be revolutionized going forward. Though things were pretty slow pre-COVID, but post-COVID, things are going to be changing in a very, very drastic manner because those people who were still very recently, while talking big about farmers, were seeing farmers as typically the liability. They start seeing farmers as an asset now. Very recently, I was part of advising the G20 Ministers Conference, which happened on 21st. And there also the point of discussion was food security. So all the top 20 countries in the world, they are seeing food security as one of the biggest challenge, and that is where they would like to focus their efforts on. And that's why we are talking about what I strongly believe would be the next five. So if we see that how the farming has evolved, so from typically a low cost activity which was done predominantly to serve on, then it evolved to serving the people around you, then it evolved to serve the across the globe. So we started having the different type of value chain. If we talk about what we are today at present, so there is a lot of talk about all sort of data collection. We talk about a lot of blockchains, AI, ML, right? Everybody's throwing a good technology term behind whatever we are doing. But the biggest multi-million dollar question is that has it helped the farmers? You'll find that majority of the initiative have not scaled up more than 100,000 farmers. Now, one of the reason is that actually whatever we are talking about has confused a farmer a lot. So we need to find a way that actually this confusion become something which can create value for the farmers. So going forward, only those technologies are going to be successful, which are able to really create value for the farmers. So I'm saying that all those entrepreneurs who are excited about being an agtech startup going forward, please understand, only get into the entrepreneur's shoes if you strongly believe that you will be able to create something which will have positive unit impact, the revenue impact. Otherwise, depending on the investors, depending on the governments, would be very, very tough. And that is something which I'll say that is going to totally dry up going forward for at least next 2 years. So be an entrepreneur in EdTech only if you strongly believe that there is some value you'll be able to deliver either to the value chain or to the farmers. That's very important. Now, what we are seeing as a future. So there is a lot of talk going about digitization, but end of the day, we strongly believe that digitization is good, but it is critical that digitization is able to impact farmer positively, which I am just repeating myself. Second area which we are seeing is that you will find a lot of controlled farming. So the farming is going to move from the villages to the cities, and that is going to become a very, very dominant area. Why? Because the smart cities are not the cities which are just having IT infrastructure. Going forward, the COVID has told us that the food of a city, urban area is very, very important. So you will find that a smart city would be a city with also the food supply, which is secure. So you'll see a lot of vertical farming and control farming happening where various technologies are there. So we'll be talking about that as well. So now let's identify what are these five mega trends. So one thing which I have talked about is digitization. Second, if you see that the COVID has created a big challenge of harvest because the labors are not existent or they are locked down. So farmers are left with very minimal labor. So that thing is actually just not India's problem, it's a global problem. So we'll see a lot of automation happening. So you will have lot of UAVs and UGVs, so unmanned aerial vehicles and unmanned ground vehicles, which is also called bots. You'll see that, or robotics, that is going to be one of the predominant trend going forward. As I said, vertical and urban farming, right? And in fact, you'll see that in developed economies, specifically when you talk about those countries which are not having sufficient food supply, the Middle East, you'll find that a lot of emphasis is going on in creating vertical farms. The fourth thing is artificial meat. If you see that actually one of the, like, we have read in our earlier science books that the secondary type of food always take more resources than the primary food. So those who are just eating vegetables, right, they'll be actually be having less stress on the overall global resources, environmental resources, than those who are eating red meat. So there is a trend in the world where actually people want to be more sustainable, and the cow and buffaloes, there is a lot of negative impact on the environment when you are using their meat, the typically red meat. So a lot of startups are coming up which are actually working on creating artificial meat. And then the fifth one is that actually we all talk about 40 to 30 to 40% of our food produced getting wasted. The food waste or destruction of the food is one of the big challenge, and it also impact 8% of all the resources used in agriculture gets wasted because we are not able to save all the food which we are producing. So the smart packaging is another area which is those so far has not been on the top of the pyramid, but you'll find that by what we have seen post COVID, the startup who are working on smart packaging, they'll become very, very relevant going forward. So let's understand what is digitization all about. So typically, we always talk about there is a lot of data, but hardly any insight. So you are having data from the governments, you are having data from the agro input companies, you are having commodity data, typically the mandis data and all that. Plus there is a lot of good agriculture practices. So all that data does exist, but the problem is that data are in silos and it's not in a form where it is usable. Then there is a lot of transaction which happens on the ground, right? The transaction which is done when a farmer sells produce to the middleman, a middleman sells it to the mandi, or mandi sells it to basically a retailer or a wholesaler, and wholesaler sells to, or retailer sells to you. So there is a lot of transactions which happens. Now that data is actually captured, but is totally not used. So you'll find that in digitization of food and agriculture ecosystem, all that data would be collected at sources, and then basically it will empower by using AI and ML engines to give valuable advice to different stakeholders. So for a farmer, actually what to grow, when to grow, how to grow, those type of interventions. To input companies, exactly where is the value chain broken, which is the specific region where a specific type of product can be sold. So all those type of intelligence is going to come through digitization of farming information. Unfortunately, as we say, India, access to data is one of the biggest challenge most of the startup who are in this area are facing, because again, nobody wants to be transparent. So it's very important that all the stakeholders start understanding that the transparency is basically not a liability, it's an asset. So we'll have to have the government who will become transparent and share a lot of data. So in fact, I've also recommended a lot of private and public players that please start sharing the data which is I'll say that pervasive data, which is where the privacy concerns are taken care of, but make more data available for startup to play with. So, but we'll see that going forward, only those companies which are able to create value out of digital assets are going to survive. While most of the companies which are just trying to be on periphery where believing that the data is the next oil, or data creates a lot of valuation for you, those are you going to see that not lasting long. The value is very, very critical. So the second key trend which I was talking about, the autonomous farming vehicle. So we have been a lot of talks going about using drones for doing a lot of activities in agriculture. Predominantly, majority of these drones have been clubbed in those who are doing the monitoring and those who are actually doing the activities on ground. Typically, the spraying of agriculture input. No, I'm not a very, very big fan of the later one, where we say that actually the drones would be used for basically spraying the crops with pesticide and insecticides. For very simple reason is that also needs a lot of change in the chemistry of the input itself, because currently the inputs are developed with a mindset that the farmer would be spraying it from the height of 1.5 meters from the ground. Drone doesn't actually fly at 1.5 meters from the ground. It flies at substantially higher level. So you'll have to change the basically the density as well as a lot of chemical. I'll say that activity needs to be done to ensure that inputs are drone ready. So I'm not seeing that thing taking in a huge way, but yes, the monitoring part is very critical. One of the reasons that the drones are becoming more and more effective is that actually, like, you are having different type of sensors which can be used whether in a drone or on unmanned ground vehicles. So you are having the visual spectrum, the multispectral cameras, hyperspectral cameras, thermal, and lidar. So what it helps is that actually you can do a lot of activities using UAVs and UGVs, basically, which includes the usage of manpower. So for example, like, for monitoring of the farm, right? Or like, identifying the spots where actually the crop is at stress, you can use drones. A lot of people also compare drone that actually whether drone is better or satellite-based technology is better. They both plays in very different roles. When it comes to satellite-based solution, the biggest challenge is that actually, like, you are not having very granular information on a specific particular farm. One thing is that the resolutions are not very high, and where the resolutions are high, the cost is very high to procure those type of imagery from the satellite. So I strongly believe that as the price of drones is coming down, this is or UGVs is coming down, this is gonna be one very sunshine sector going forward. Some of the activities which drones and the bots can do is, as I said, monitoring, then the crop protection. So rather than using the drone, the bots can be used actually to take care of the weeds, right? The bots can be used to take care of actually spraying the way the farmer himself is spraying without changing your typically chemical composition of the pesticides. Farm and land management, inventory. So crop and both livestock inventory can be tracked using UAVs and UGVs, and basically the farm application like harvesting. So all those things you'll find that going forward, our reliance on the manpower on the ground in the fields would be reduced substantially, and you'll find more and more automation happening. Another challenge with such automation is that actually the size of the land holding. So typically when in India we say that, like, majority, more than 90% of farmers are like, less than 1 hectares of land holding, such things become prohibitively costly for them. But I strongly believe that the new models, like for example, like, sharing the bots or the drones, right, or giving drones as a service or UGVs as a service, those type of models will evolve further, and you'll find that a lot of activity happening in this area. And at the global level also, you'll find that the developed economies have already adopted these type of technologies in a big manner, and that is going to happen to the developing world as well. The next trend, which I strongly believe is going to be like, very critical going forward, is urban and vertical farming. So typically what happens is that today, if I want to buy a kiwi, right, that kiwi comes from New Zealand, and post COVID you'll find that actually, like, most of the cross-border supply chains are in huge stress, right? So getting a kiwi from New Zealand is becoming next to impossible today. So going forward also we'll find that we'll start looking at food which is closer to us. So generally the best case scenario would be that 80% of the food we consume should come within 50 kilometers from where we are. That is the best case scenario. Environmentally also that is better, rather than actually, like, getting the rice consumed in Punjab from Tamil Nadu. That's not going to make too much of sense going forward. So you'll find that actually, like, the cities are the major consumers of fruit and vegetable, right? And it's very concentrated there. So you'll find a lot of activity happening in vertical farming, where in the middle of the city you will have a lot of farms which are producing. Yes, currently, like, the green leafies are something which is, like, very easily being done. But, like, I was interacting with Badia farms in Dubai very recently. I was at their farm, and they've started growing strawberries, they've started growing tomatoes, and the yields are pretty high, 3 to 4 times of what actually generally are being produced in open farms. So you'll find that there would be substantial shift towards when we say that controlled farming. Now, controlled farming are having its various modes. So one is typically, like, you are plain vanilla greenhouses. So in the plain vanilla greenhouses, you are able to control few parameters of agriculture, and still, like, you will be able to have better yields, and you will be able to produce those crops which are not actually as per the agroclimatical zone of your area. So that is area. If we take it a little bit, I'm saying that making it more complex, then we are having hydroponics and aeroponics, where actually you control each and every part of doing the agriculture. So any crop which can be produced in conventional farm, in future we'll be able to produce that in a hydroponic or aeroponic based environments. So the biggest positive part here is that you are growing something which is very close to you. So you reduce a lot of cost and a lot of environmental impact of cross-border movement of the produce. In fact, the countries like Middle East, they are planning that actually from current level of 80% of their food is being imported. In next 10 years, they want to take it to the level of 40 to 45%. So you will find a lot of activity happening in those specific areas. Second thing which is making control farming also very, very important is that actually the climate change impact. So let's take example of like, the best of coffee is coming from Ethiopia, and we are doing a project in Ethiopia. The problem is that over past 5 decades, on every 10 years, the temperature in Ethiopia is rising by close to 0.38 degrees centigrade per 10 years. And the rainfall is falling by close to 6% per decade. Now that has made it those areas where the coffee was produced becoming very, very less efficient for the coffee. So previously in a harvest season, 25 years or 30 years back, the previous generation, the harvest used to happen every day. Today the harvest happens every 3 days. So already there is a lot of impact of climate change in those type of areas. Now control farming ensure that actually you are able to reverse or make the agriculture climate resilient, where you can still grow the coffee in the same area, because now you are able to control the temperature, you are able to control the humidity, you are able to control the sunlight. So all those parameters can be controlled. Another very big benefit of using urban farms is that actually you are able to reduce the usage of the chemicals. So when we say that actually there is a lot of buzz about organic, right? Now there is a challenge of growing organic in those farms which are already infested by actually a lot of chemicals which we have been putting for past 25 years. When you are doing aeroponics or hydroponics, you are able to make the usage of chemical next to zero, except the plant nutrients. You don't need to use anything else. So even when we talk about healthy eating habits, vertical farms are gonna be very, very crucial and critical for that. And that's make going forward the vertical farming as one of a sunshine area when it comes to agriculture technology. Next of activity, if we say that which I strongly believe is gonna have pretty decent upshoot, is basically artificial meat. So as I've explained you that actually when you want to have a buffalo or when you want to have a lamb and then actually feed it, ensure that it is disease free, and then actually slaughter it and do all that process, it is not very, very environmentally sustainable area, because huge amount of resources are utilized in doing that. In fact, if you have read recent articles, the Brazil is losing its Amazon forest just because they want to have more buffaloes and cows, which they can export as a meat to US. So the environmental impact of meat is very, very negative. But at the same time, the people should be given the chance to eat what they feel like eating. So artificial meat, that's why, is now playing a very, very critical role. Now there are two ways of actually producing artificial meat. One is that actually the plant-based meat, where actually we use the plants, typically the soya bean, the wheats, and the peas, to create protein, and those proteins are through a process converted into something which is very similar to meat in texture, the taste, as well as presentation. So that's one way of doing it, and a lot of startups in the West, they are doing it. So you are having the typically the burgers which are actually taste like the hamburger, but actually it is not having any meat in that. Second way of doing artificial meat is where you are having a cultured meat. So here what we do is that you collect the tissues, and those tissues of an animal are actually grown in lab, and then they are converted to meat. So these type of startups, you are seeing that actually they need a lot of investment, because it's at the lab level you have to do it, and it's about pure science. But you'll see that more and more meat coming to the markets going forward would be actually artificial meat. The fifth area which I initially talked about was smart packaging. So currently when we do things, we just package and then we sell. Going forward, as we want to reduce the wastage, at the same time we also want our supply chain to be more robust and could be monitored on a real-time basis, we need smart packaging. So smart packaging actually is having various level. So where where you are using a simple QR code, to the level where you are actually putting an IoT device in the product itself. So very recently, actually, we were talking to one of the companies which is based out of Mexico. They wanted actually to put RFID based tag to their bananas, so that actually they can ensure that from the climate to the temperature where it is being stored, it gives you alarm whether actually across the whole life cycle, whether the banana has been ever been in climatic condition which is not going to be impacting that. So this is typically the fifth part of it. And now we, as I said, that DG Agri, we are a platform which we do a lot of things. So thank you. So I would like to end my this thing because I think I got a phone from the moderator. So thank you.
Mr. Pareek spoke about, and his topic was the next big five. And so Ankit is asking, can you tell more about your venture?
Okay. So actually, my company is called Digi Agri. So what we are doing is that we are digitizing the complete agriculture ecosystem. So we work on the ground with the farmers, and we collect a lot of data from them, and including their geolocations, and that is used to collect third-party data from satellite to drones to IoTs, and all of that data is used to create valuable insight for the farmers. So typically, which crop they should be growing, when they should be doing the sowing, when they should be applying what type of agro inputs, when they should be harvesting. So that's on the side of the farmer. Now, same information which we collect from the ground about the farmer and his crop is typically used by the governments. It's used by agrochemical companies. Is used by the aggregators. Currently, we are having a project going on called Smart Potato, where we have digitized a complete potato value chain in Gujarat. We are working in Nepal for food and vegetables, where actually we have created an aggregation platform where one of the two largest supermarkets of Nepal, they are buying fruits and vegetables directly from our farmers. We are working with government of UAE in Middle East typically to provide the digitization of their farmers, where actually they are getting contract farming done across 30 countries of Africa and Asia. So these are typical activities which we are doing. I hope I've been able to answer your question. Good.
Okay, and we have more questions coming from Vinay. How critical is satellite-based solutions in agriculture, and how do we engage with these firms today?
Okay, so satellite-based solutions, believe me, if we are talking about uh, delivering it to the per farmer basis, that's very difficult, right? So you'll have to be a corporation or you'll need to be typically a government to be able to afford those type of services. Secondly, uh, still satellite-based technology is going through its own churn. So I won't say that they have perfected it, but yes, few type of things. One is like the farm level stress they are able to identify specifically when you are having the typically land size parcel of close to 5 hectares. Anything lower than that, there are a lot of companies who claim it, but I have not seen them being able to deliver the value which you can really impact a farmer. Now, the second part was that how you can engage with them. There are a lot of companies, just Google it. Some of them is World Tools, which we work with. They are based out of Sweden. Then you are having Open Soil, which is again based out of US. So there are a lot of companies which are doing that. In India, there is Pakshev, there is Satsure. Just Google them and then you can connect with them.
So from Sanket, what investors are looking into indoor hydroponic urban farming company?
Okay. See, when we talk about the vertical farming, including the hydroponics or aeroponics, investors are looking at actually, first of all, what type of crops you are being able to do it in a controlled environment in a pilot form. So nobody's gonna just fund you just because you say that I'll do hydroponics and please fund me. Investors are not looking at that. Investors are looking at where you've been able to demonstrate by spending your own money that you are able to create those type of things. Nobody is gonna post COVID at least. Nobody is gonna fund you just for doing the experimentation because this is something which is not a rocket science. People have been able to do that. So whether we talk about aerofarms, whether we talk about the Badia, there are already examples which are successfully doing it. So somebody just putting money just for you to experiment is not going to happen. So what you have to do is that actually you'll have to create your own small size farm, run it for a couple of seasons, show the economics of that, and then you'll see that the large investors getting into it.
Okay, we have one more question. How can a startup gather data for predictive modeling or GIS automation? From Abhijit Banerjee.
Okay, so Abhijit, that is one of the biggest question that unfortunately there are the data set which are available, but they are actually again demo data sets. They are not something which is actually from the the ground up. Only organization which can give you that type of data is government, which is what we are trying to approach them and say that please make available data sets for doing those type of activity. Otherwise, it's you'll have to tie up with someone who is already having access to that databases, like company like us or Cropin, and then show the value of what you are doing so that they are ready to share that data with you. Otherwise, as such, there is not availability of like the real-time data of farmers, which is like you can just plug into an API and take that. That's so far is not available.
Mr. Parekh, Rakshit is asking for the second time in this tough time, how do you manage to take care of the high salaries being a tech company?
That's an awesome question.
This is the second time he was asking.
No, that's perfectly. I'm saying that, guys. I won't say that actually we are managing well, right? Because I strongly believe COVID is a time when like you are just like somebody pushing you in the water. Now either you should have a oxygen cylinder or you should have very strong lungs. So as we are not typically investment driven company, we have not raised any money so far. So we strongly believe that actually we are having strong lungs because we are profitable. Now, question is that going forward, 4 months, 3 months, 7 months, you don't know how long this problem is going to exist, and that is already like hitting your revenues hugely. So I won't say that actually that the best way is to get your people out, because believe me, like when things gonna improve, the people are only those who are gonna make you successful company. So we are not firing people. Talk to your employees. Find a way where actually like can reduce the burden of salaries with them. That is the best thing which I would suggest you should be doing it. It has to be like so that reaching out to your employees, make them understand, give them some stock options, right? Show them the hope that if things goes better, then you'll be taking care of them later on as well. So be innovative. Each company should have its own, but I'm saying that firing people is not the very interesting or the right way of doing it.
Okay. Okay, Dinesh is asking what type of technology application can you work on for a greenhouse hydroponic farm to retail?
Can you repeat the question?
That question, I can't see it anymore though. Mm. I'm waiting for another one. Okay, so can you please amplify on application of RPA technology?
Okay. Uh, it seems like actually like you're trying to find out how diversified knowledge I'm having rather than like focusing on these five technology. So yeah, RPA. I'll say that in agriculture, no, not required at all, right? So we are having like the robotic processing systems and all those type of stuff. Believe me, like they are more suited to enterprise application currently, because we don't have too many forms to fill. We are not having too many processes which are already digitized. If we talk about from 1 to 10, where the digitization in agriculture ecosystem would be, we would be at somewhere around 3, right? And at level of 3, you don't need RPS to take care of it. So I'm saying that currently, if you ask me, I won't like to create any product RPA based on RPA for agriculture domain. Bots, maybe yes. So like start working on WhatsApp bots if you want to do something, because that is the easier way to pass on information to the farmers. So bot is more in thing than RPA for agriculture for sure.
So we have Mukul asking, sir, in upcoming market post COVID-19, does F2C model will work?
Which model? FPC.
F2C. I
Farm to
think I read
consumer.
it.
Okay. See, if anything is gonna work post COVID, is gonna be like direct access to the customers, right? So farm to consumer is something which is gonna be, I believe, like if you are able to solve the puzzles of supply chain and making it efficient, I think that's the way forward. For sure, that's gonna work, right? So if you see that like the companies which are getting the last mile sorted out to digitization, right, are the only companies which have been doing well, right? Definitely in India, because of some confusion of lockdown and all that, we were not very sure that Swiggy should come to your house or not. But if we see that like they are, the last mile access has been now more or less sorted out, in future we would be more prepared of like using such services. So I strongly believe that F2C is going to work going forward. So if you have something interesting, please look at it, no problem.
Thank you so much, Mr. Parekh, for answering most of all the questions.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.